When I was 12, my father abandoned me at a diner and told me to man up. That night, I called my uncle and never spoke to my parents again, until I got the invitation to my dad's retirement party. Sup Reddit. My parents abandoned me at 12 over a silly thing. I called my uncle and waited by the trash. He drove me straight to the police station, and that was the last time I spoke to my family. Until I got the invitation. Here's what went down. Before I, 30 male, get to the main event, you need to understand what kind of people I was dealing with. This was 12 years of emotional abuse disguised as tough love. My parents, Isaac and Maria, were those classic small-town narcissists who cared more about appearances than their actual kids. My dad managed a hardware store and acted like he was running a Fortune 500 company. My mom worked part-time at a bank and spent the rest of her time gossiping and playing martyr on Facebook. Then there was my brother Leo, 4 years older and the golden child who could do no wrong. Football star, straight A's, with a lot of help from teachers who didn't want to deal with my parents, popular with girls. Everything I wasn't, according to the daily reminders I got at home. The favoritism wasn't subtle. Leo got a car for his 16th birthday, a used Camaro that my dad spent weeks fixing up with him in the garage, teaching him about engines and man stuff. When I turned 16, I got a lecture about earning things, and was told I could walk or ride the bus. When I asked if I could at least learn about cars too, my dad laughed and said, "You? You'd probably break something." Family dinners were basically Leo appreciation sessions where he'd talk about football practice, his grades, his friends, while I sat there invisible. If I tried to share anything about my day, Leo would interrupt with some story about himself, and my parents would immediately shift their attention to him. Eventually, I just stopped trying. Anytime I did something wrong, the punishment was always extreme and designed to humiliate. Not just grounding or losing privileges, but public embarrassment in front of Leo's friends, having my few possessions taken away permanently, or being made to apologize to Leo. By the time I was 12, I'd learned to expect nothing and be grateful for scraps, which is why the diner incident wasn't really shocking. We'd been driving back from some forced family vacation at my mom's sister's lake house. She'd had this brilliant idea that a weekend there would bring us closer together. My dad bitched about gas prices the entire drive. We stopped at this rundown Denny's for dinner, and I'm trying to eat while Leo keeps flicking pieces of food at me when nobody's looking. Dad's reading some business magazine, acting like we don't exist. Mom's on her phone. I reach for the ketchup, knock over my chocolate milkshake, and it goes everywhere. Not just on the table, all over Leo's varsity jacket that he wore everywhere like it was a fucking superhero cape. "You little shit!" Leo jumps up, milkshake dripping off his precious jacket. "Dad, he did that on purpose." The waitress rushed over with towels, apologizing like it was her fault. "Accidents happen, honey," she said to me with a kind smile. But my parents weren't having it. Any normal parent would have said, "Accidents happen," and asked for some napkins. My father? He looks at the mess, looks at me, and his face goes cold. "Get up," he says. "Dad, it was an accident, I swear." I said, "Get up." The entire diner's watching now. Other families with their normal problems, probably thinking we're just having a typical restaurant meltdown. My mother doesn't even look up from her phone, just says, "Maybe this will teach him to be more careful." Dad grabs my arm and shoves me toward the exit. He stops at the parking lot and points to the road. "You want to act like a child? Fine. Figure out your own way home." I actually laughed, thought he was bluffing. "Come on, Dad, it's just a milkshake." "You think this is about a milkshake?" His voice was eerily calm. "This is about consequences. You're 12 years old, and you still act like a baby. Time to grow up." Leo had followed us out, still holding his sticky jacket. "Just leave him, Dad. Maybe he'll learn something." The way he said it with this satisfied smirk made it clear this wasn't spontaneous. They'd been waiting for an excuse. "You can't be serious," I said, but my voice cracked because suddenly I realized they were. "Dead serious." Dad pulled out his wallet, threw a $10 bill at me. "There's a bus station 5 miles that way." "Dad, you can't just leave me here. Watch us." They got in the car. Leo rolled down his window as they were backing out. "Don't call us until you've learned some respect." Then he actually smirked and flicked me off. I stood there in that parking lot watching their taillights disappear, holding a crumpled $10 bill, wearing shorts and a t-shirt in what was turning into a cold night. The Denny's closed at 11 p.m. It was already past 9. The waitress from inside came out during her smoke break and saw me standing there. "You okay, sweetie? Where'd your family go?" "They left," I said, because what else was there to say? She looked around the empty parking lot, then back at me. "Left? What do you mean left?" but I couldn't explain it to her. How do you tell a stranger that your parents just abandoned you over spilled chocolate? She'd think I was lying or making it up for attention. But here's the thing about being abandoned by your family at 12 years old. You either break or you get really resourceful, really fucking fast. I chose resourceful. The payphone outside the Denny's was older than dirt, but it worked. I had exactly 4 numbers memorized. Home, not calling those assholes. My best friend Tommy, his parents would freak and call mine. My grandma, who lived 3 states away, and Uncle Adam. Adam was my dad's younger brother, and they barely spoke. Something about Adam being irresponsible because he rode a motorcycle, owned a bar, and never got married. In other words, he was everything my dad wasn't. The phone rang 4 times. I was preparing to leave a voicemail when his voice came through. Yeah? Uncle Adam? It's Alan. Alan? Kid? Everything okay? I told him everything. The lake house, the milkshake, the parking lot abandonment, the $10 bill that was supposed to magically transport me home. I didn't cry, partly because I was too angry, mostly because some part of me already knew crying wouldn't fix this. Where exactly are you? Denny's on E35, about 30 miles north of Austin. Don't move. Don't talk to anyone. Don't go anywhere. I'm coming to get you. Uncle. Alan, listen to me carefully. Your parents just committed a felony. Abandoning a minor child is criminal endangerment. Do you understand what I'm saying? I didn't. Not really. But the way he said it made something click into place. This wasn't normal family discipline. This was actually illegal. I'll be there in 40 minutes, he said. If anyone asks, you're waiting for your uncle. 40 minutes later, Adam pulled into the parking lot on his Harley. He took one look at me sitting on the curb, and his face went through several different expressions. None of them good. How long have they been gone? About 2 hours. He helped me onto the back of his bike, gave me a spare helmet, and we rode back toward town. But instead of going to his place, he pulled into the parking lot of the local police station. What are we doing here? Teaching your parents a lesson they should have learned years ago. The desk sergeant was this older guy who apparently knew Adam from high school. Adam explained the situation while I sat in a plastic chair trying to process that we were actually filing a police report against my parents. This is pretty cut and dried, the sergeant said, typing up the report. Child abandonment, endangerment of a minor. We'll need to do a welfare check on the home. Make sure this isn't part of a pattern. It is part of a pattern, Adam said. I've been watching Alan treat this kid like garbage for years. Tonight was just the first time he was stupid enough to make it illegal. The sergeant made some phone calls. 20 minutes later, a CPS worker showed up. This woman named Janet. She interviewed me for about an hour. Asked about my home life, school, whether I felt safe, whether this kind of thing had happened before. I answered honestly. The emotional neglect, the constant comparisons to Leo, the way they treated me like an inconvenience they had to tolerate. Have they ever hit you? Janet asked. Number. But they didn't have to. She nodded like she'd heard that before. Where would you like to stay tonight? I looked at Adam. He nodded. With my uncle. 3 hours later, we're sitting in Uncle Adam's apartment above his bar, eating leftover pizza and talking through what happens next. His place was comfortable. You can stay here as long as you need, Adam said. But I want you to understand something. If you do this, there's no going back. Your parents are going to be furious. They're going to try to make this your fault. Try to convince everyone you're just a troubled kid acting out. Good, I said. Let them try. He smiled at that. You sound like you've got this figured out. The next afternoon, they showed up at Adam's apartment. I was doing homework at the kitchen table when I heard the pounding on the door. Adam opened it to find my parents standing there, my dad's face red with rage, my mom clutching her purse like she was about to be mugged. Where is he? My dad demanded, pushing past Adam into the apartment. Alan, get your things. We're going home. Now. My mom's voice had that shrill edge she got when she was trying to sound authoritative, but was really just losing her shit. Adam stepped between them and me. He's not going anywhere. He's our son, my dad said. Like that settled everything. You can't just kidnap him because you don't like how we discipline our kids. Discipline? Adam's voice was dangerously quiet. You abandoned a 12-year-old at a diner. That's not discipline. That's criminal endangerment. We were teaching him consequences. My mom jumped in. He needs to learn that actions have results. You wouldn't understand. You don't have children. Thank God for that. If that's what having children looks like. My dad's chest puffed out like he was about to start something. Don't you dare talk to my wife that way. And don't think you can turn our son against us with your biker trash lifestyle. Adam actually laughed. I own a successful business, I pay my taxes, and I don't abandon kids at restaurants. What exactly makes me trash compared to you? That's when my dad looked directly at me for the first time since walking in, and his face was pure disgust. Look what you've done, he said. Look at the mess you've caused. We should have left you at that diner permanently. The room went dead silent. Adam took a step toward my father. Get out. We're not leaving without our son. You don't have a son here. You threw away your son at a Denny's parking lot. What you have here is a kid who's better off without you. They left, but not before my dad pointed at me one more time and said, This isn't over. He was wrong. It was completely over. 2 days later, the sergeant called to tell us my parents had been charged with child endangerment and were required to attend mandatory parenting classes and family counseling. The CPS investigation would take months, but given what had happened and my clear preference, I could remain with Adam indefinitely. The consequences hit them fast. Word spread about the charges, and they were quietly asked to step down from the volunteer positions that made them feel important. My dad's boss at the hardware store, a guy with 3 kids of his own, started treating him differently, giving him the shittiest assignments and cutting his hours. The court-mandated family counseling sessions were a joke. I went to 3 of them before the therapist told the judge that my parents showed no genuine remorse or understanding of the harm caused, and recommended against any further attempts at reconciliation. Kid's better off with you, the sergeant told Adam after the final hearing awarded him full custody. I've seen a lot of family situations, and this one was toxic long before the diner incident. That's when I knew I was never going back. Not because I was angry, though I absolutely was, but because for the first time in my life, I was around adults who gave a shit whether I lived or died. Living with Uncle Adam was like discovering I'd been playing life on expert mode without realizing it. Suddenly, there were adults who asked about my day and actually listened to the answer, who helped with homework without making me feel stupid, who remembered that I existed without being prompted. Adam's girlfriend, Leah, moved in about 3 months after I did. She was this badass Latina woman who managed the bar's books and didn't take shit from anyone. The first time she met me, she looked me up and down and said, "You're too skinny. We're fixing that immediately." She wasn't wrong. She cooked like feeding people was her personal mission, and within 6 months, I'd gained 20 pounds and grown 4 inches. Amazing what proper nutrition and the absence of constant stress can do. The legal stuff dragged on for a year. My parents hired some lawyer who tried to paint me as a troubled child who needed structure. CPS wasn't buying it. The investigator had interviewed my teachers, my former neighbors, even Tommy's parents. The consensus was pretty clear. My home life had been screwed up for years, and the diner incident was just the breaking point. Adam hired his own lawyer, this shark who specialized in family law. During one court hearing, my dad actually tried to argue that I was too influenced by my uncle's lifestyle and needed to be returned to a stable family environment. The lawyer shut that down fast. Your Honor, my client works 60 hours a week running a successful business, owns his home outright, and has provided stable housing, healthcare, and educational support for this child. The biological parents, meanwhile, literally abandoned him at a roadside diner and are currently under court-mandated supervision for child endangerment. I'm not sure what definition of stable they're using. The judge agreed. Full custody to Adam, with my parents getting supervised visitation rights if I chose to exercise them. I didn't. School became actually tolerable once I wasn't dreading going home every day. My grades shot up from C's and D's to mostly A's and B's. I joined the computer club, started learning programming. My teachers noticed the change immediately. My English teacher pulled me aside after class one day. Alan, I don't know what's changed at home, but whatever it is, keep it up. You're like a different kid this year. Adam let me work a few hours a week at the bar, bussing tables and doing basic maintenance. Nothing illegal, just teaching me work ethic and the value of earning money. Leah showed me how to balance the register, manage inventory, deal with difficult customers. By the time I was 14, I could run the place for a few hours if they needed to step out. The bar regulars became like extended family. There was Danny, this old-timer who'd served in Vietnam and always had the best stories. Selena, a nurse who worked night shifts and stopped by for breakfast drinks. Martin, who owned a construction company and started offering me weekend work when I turned 15. The real test came when I turned 16. My parents had moved to a different part of town after the court case, probably to avoid the embarrassment of neighbors who knew what they'd done. Leo was off at college on a football scholarship that would be revoked 2 years later when he blew out his knee and lost his academic eligibility. They sent me a birthday card, one of those generic happy 16th birthday things you buy at the grocery store with a $50 check and a note. Hope you're doing well, Mom and Dad. I showed it to Adam and Leah over dinner. What do you want to do with it? Adam asked. I tore up the check and threw it in the trash. Nothing. They had 4 years to miss me. Too late now. Leah nodded approvingly. Good. Don't let them buy their way back into your life with guilt money. That summer, I got my first real job at a computer repair shop downtown. The owner, Dave, was one of Adam's regular customers who'd heard I was good with technology. Started me at minimum wage, but I learned more in 3 months than most people learn in 2 years of computer science classes. By senior year, I was managing my own clients at the shop, building custom systems, even doing some basic network administration for small businesses. Dave offered me a full-time position after graduation, but I had bigger plans. I'd been accepted to UT Austin for computer science, with a combination of academic scholarships and student loans that would cover everything. Adam offered to help with expenses, but I turned him down. Not because I didn't appreciate it, but because I wanted to prove I could do it myself. You don't have anything to prove, Leah said the night before I left for college. Yeah, I do, I replied. Just not to them. College was where everything clicked into place. I wasn't the abandoned kid or the nephew Adam took in. I was just Alan, computer science major, guy who worked his ass off and didn't take shortcuts. My parents tried to contact me exactly once during freshman year. Some bullshit about family and forgiveness, and how they'd learned from their mistakes. I didn't even read the whole email before deleting it. They'd had 6 years to learn from their mistakes. Leo, meanwhile, had flamed out spectacularly. The knee injury killed his football career, his grades tanked without the athletic department holding his hand, and he ended up dropping out junior year with a communications degree that was basically worthless. Last I heard from Adam, he was selling insurance and living in my parents' basement at 23 years old. Me? I was thriving. Dean's List every semester, research assistant position with Dr. Williams in the cybersecurity lab, internship at a tech startup that turned into a job offer before I'd even graduated. The real game changer came through a guy named Kevin, who I met in advanced algorithms class. Kevin was this quietly brilliant Korean-American dude whose family had money, but who worked harder than anyone I'd ever met. We started studying together, became friends, and by senior year, we were talking about starting our own company. Kevin's background was useful for more than just business plans. His dad was a corporate attorney. His mom worked in venture capital. They taught me how wealthy people actually think about money, investments, long-term planning. Shit my parents never understood because they were too busy arguing about grocery store receipts. The summer after graduation, Kevin and I launched our consulting firm. Nothing fancy at first, just two guys with laptops helping small businesses set up proper IT infrastructure. But we were good at it. Our first big break came 6 months in when we landed a contract with a local manufacturing company. Their entire network had been held together with duct tape and prayers. Kevin handled the client relations while I rebuilt their infrastructure from scratch. 3 weeks later, they were running smoother than they had in years. Within 2 years, we had 12 employees and were handling cybersecurity for mid-sized companies across Texas. Kevin handled the business development and client relations. I focused on the technical side and team management. We complemented each other perfectly. By the time I turned 25, I was making more money than my dad had ever dreamed of. I bought a house in East Austin, a solid 3-bedroom with a home office and a yard big enough for the German Shepherd I'd been wanting since I was a kid. Named him Tank, because he looked like he could knock down a wall, but was actually gentle as hell. Adam and Leah came to the housewarming party. Not bad for a kid who got ditched at a Denny's, he said, grinning. Not bad at all, I agreed. That's when Leah pulled me aside. Your parents have been asking around about you. What do you mean? They've been to the bar a few times. Subtle at first, just asking how you're doing, where you're living, what kind of work you're in. Adam told them to back off, but they're persistent. I felt that familiar cold anger settle in my chest. The same feeling I'd had in that parking lot 18 years ago. What do they want? Hard to say, but people don't usually start asking questions unless they want something. I filed that information away and kept building my life. Kevin and I sold the consulting firm to a larger company for a number that would have made my parents shit themselves. By 30, I owned my house outright and was running the cybersecurity division for the expanding company. Tank was happy, I was happy, and I had a small circle of people who actually gave a damn about me. Then, on a Tuesday morning in March, I got an email that changed everything. The sender was listed as Isaac, my father. The subject line read, "Important family event." I almost deleted it without reading, but I was curious. Alan, I know we haven't spoken in many years, but I wanted to reach out personally. I'm retiring next month after 40 years in retail management, and your mother and I are having a celebration at the VFW Hall on Saturday the 18th. We'd like you to be there. I know things between us have been complicated, but maybe it's time to put the past behind us and focus on being a family again. Dad. I stared at the screen for a long time. After 18 years of silence, they wanted to play Happy Family at his retirement party. The balls on these people. Kevin walked over and read it over my shoulder. You're not actually considering going, are you? Oh, I'm definitely going, I said. Just not for the reasons they think. A retirement party. Public event. All their friends and what was left of their social circle gathered in one place to celebrate dear old Dad. All I needed was to show up and tell the truth. My dad's retirement party was scheduled for a Saturday evening in 2 weeks. According to Leo's Facebook event page, they were expecting about 50 people. Co-workers from his various jobs over the years, church friends, extended family, neighbors from their old street. Our old next-door neighbor would be there. She'd been commenting on all of Leo's posts with those overly enthusiastic reactions older people love. The family from 3 houses down, who used to give me Halloween candy and always asked how school was going. The pastor and his wife, who probably still thought my parents were model Christians. Kevin offered to come with me for moral support, but I told him this was something I needed to handle alone. Saturday evening arrived, and things were about to implode. The VFW hall was exactly what I'd expected. The crowd was a mix of people I vaguely remembered from childhood, and strangers who'd entered my parents' lives after I'd left. I grabbed a drink and started working the room, introducing myself as Alan, Isaac's son. Most people seemed genuinely surprised to meet me, which told me everything I needed to know about how my parents had been spinning the family narrative for the past 18 years. My parents were holding court near the front of the room, accepting congratulations and playing the part of beloved community members. My dad looked older, grayer, but still had that entitled air about him. My mom was overdressed for the venue, trying too hard to look important. Leo was there with his wife Amanda, who I'd never met. He'd gotten married about 5 years ago, and from what I could see, she was way too good for him. Attractive, well-dressed, the kind of woman who probably believed all his bullshit about being a good guy. I spent the first hour just listening and observing. Let people ask questions about where I'd been, what I did for work, why we hadn't seen each other in so long. I gave vague answers and let them draw their own conclusions. The breakthrough came when I was talking to our old next-door neighbor, who'd always been friendly when I was a kid. She was telling me how proud my parents must be of my success, how they'd always talked about having 2 wonderful sons. Actually, I said casually, we haven't spoken in 18 years, not since I was 12. Her face changed immediately. I'm sorry, what? They abandoned me at a diner when I was 12. I haven't heard from them since, until they invited me to this party. She stared at me like I'd just told her the earth was flat. That can't be right. Your parents are such good people. They're pillars of the community. Are they? I asked. Because pillars of the community don't usually leave children at restaurants and drive away. Word spread quickly after that. Not because I was broadcasting it, but because she was the kind of person who couldn't keep shocking information to herself. I watched conversations stop and restart as people processed what they'd heard, looked over at my parents with new eyes, whispered among themselves. By 8:30, the party atmosphere had shifted. People were having whispered conversations, glancing over at my parents, trying to figure out what was true and what wasn't. My parents had noticed the change in energy and were starting to look uncomfortable. That's when Leo decided to confront me. He walked over with Amanda in tow, his face flushed from alcohol and anger. What the hell are you doing here? He hissed, trying to keep his voice low. Celebrating Dad's retirement, I said calmly. Same as everyone else. You know what I mean. Why are you telling people that bullshit story about being abandoned? Amanda looked confused, glancing between us. What story? What's he talking about? Nothing, honey. Alan's always been dramatic. He tends to exaggerate things. Exaggerate? I turned to Amanda with genuine curiosity. What has Leo told you about his family? He said his parents had 2 sons, but she trailed off, looking at Leo with growing suspicion. But what? I prompted gently. He said you died when you were young. In a car accident. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Even Leo looked shocked that she'd said it out loud. Dead? I said, loud enough that people nearby turned to listen. That's interesting. When exactly did I die, Leo? His face went white. Amanda was staring at him like she was seeing him for the first time. You told me you were an only child, she said slowly, when we first met. Then later you said you had a brother who died. Now he's here, very much alive. What the hell is going on? A small crowd had gathered around us now, sensing drama. The pastor was there, looking confused and concerned. The neighbors were whispering to each other, trying to piece together what they were hearing. That's when my father appeared, having noticed the commotion. Alan, I think you should leave. Should I? I looked around at all the faces watching us. I just got here. I'm finally meeting my sister-in-law. Amanda, right? Did Leo ever tell you about the time our parents left me at a Denny's when I was 12 years old? That's enough, my father said, his voice getting louder. Is it? Because I was just getting to the good part. About how I spent the night behind a dumpster because the restaurant closed and I had nowhere to go. About how my uncle had to call the police and CPS because abandoning children is actually illegal. The room had gone completely quiet now. Even the music seemed to have stopped. My mother rushed over, her face panic-stricken. You're making a scene over something that happened so long ago. Making a scene? I pulled out my phone and showed them an old photo. 12-year-old me, looking exactly like what I was. An abandoned child. This was taken the morning after, when Uncle Adam picked me up. After I'd spent the night outside because my family decided to teach me a lesson about spilling a milkshake. Several people had their phones out now, recording. One of my cousins was definitely filming from across the room. Amanda was backing away from Leo like he had a contagious disease. You told me you were an only child? She repeated, her voice getting louder. For 3 years, you told me you were an only child. Baby, let me explain. Explain what? That you lied to me about having a brother? She walked out, just turned around and left, heels clicking on the linoleum floor. Leo started to follow her, then stopped and turned back to me with pure hatred in his eyes. You piece of shit. You always have to ruin everything. I didn't ruin anything, I said calmly. I just told the truth. My father stepped closer, his voice shaking with rage. Get out! Get out now, or I'll have you thrown out. I looked around the room at all the shocked faces, the people holding phones, the whispered conversations. Actually, I think I'm done here. Enjoy the rest of your party. I walked toward the exit, but stopped at the door to address the room one final time. For those of you wondering, yes, it's all true. That's the kind of family values you're celebrating tonight. Then I walked out into the parking lot, got in my car, and drove home. The video one of my cousins took spread through our hometown's social networks like wildfire. Nothing went viral. This wasn't some national news story. But in a town of 15,000 people, everyone knew everyone else's business within 48 hours. By Monday morning, I was back in Austin, but the updates kept rolling in through Adam, who still lived in town and heard everything through the Bar Gossip Network. My parents' church asked them to step down from their volunteer positions. The pastor apparently called it a family matter that needed to be resolved privately before they could serve in leadership roles again. Translation: we don't want to be associated with people who abandon children. My dad got fired from his part-time job at the hardware store. The owner had grandkids of his own and didn't want someone with a child abandonment history working around customers' families. My mom's position at the local bank also became redundant shortly after the video made its rounds among the staff. But the personal fallout was even worse. Friends stopped calling. Church members crossed the street to avoid them. Neighbors who'd been cordial for decades suddenly had nothing to say. Leo's situation imploded completely. Amanda filed for divorce within a week, citing fraudulent misrepresentation of family history in the paperwork. She took the house, the car, and what was left of his dignity. The real kicker was that she worked at the law firm that handled half the divorces in town, so everyone in the legal community knew exactly why their marriage had fallen apart. 2 weeks after the party, I got a call from her. She'd gotten my number from Adam and wanted to know if everything I'd said was true. I told her everything. The diner, the night outside, Adam picking me up, the court case, the 18 years of silence. I offered to send her copies of the police report and CPS documents if she wanted proof. She was quiet for a long time after I finished. Finally, she said, he told me he was an only child when we first met. Then, when I pressed him about family, he said he'd had a brother who died in a car accident when you were both young. He even cried when he told me about it. He cried about my fake death? Oscar-worthy performance. I felt so bad for him. For your parents. I thought they were these grieving people who'd lost a child. Her voice was getting harder. 3 years. 3 years of marriage built on lies. I'm sorry you got caught in the middle of this. Don't be. You did me a favor. Better to find out now than after we had kids. Amanda turned out to be a valuable ally in the aftermath. As a paralegal at the biggest law firm in town, she had access to all the best gossip and kept me updated on how the dominoes were falling. The story had legs because it was so perfectly horrible. 6 months later, Adam called with an update that made me laugh out loud. Leo had moved back in with our parents, who were now living in a trailer park on the outskirts of town. My dad's retirement had turned into unemployment, and between his lost income and the legal fees from Amanda's divorce, they'd lost the house. It gets better, Adam said. Leo's working at a gas station now. Night shift. The irony is beautiful. The local news even picked up the story eventually. Nothing major, just a small piece about how social media was changing family dynamics and the consequences of secrets in small towns. They didn't use names, but in a town that size, everyone knew who they were talking about. For the next 2 years, I heard occasional updates but didn't think much about them. My life was good. Great, actually. Kevin and I had expanded our business. Tank was living his best life. The past felt like exactly that. The past. Then, on a cold February morning, I got another email from my father. The subject line was just one word. Please. Alan, I know you have no reason to help us, but we're desperate. Your mother is sick. Really sick. Cancer. The medical bills are crushing us, and we've already lost everything else. Leo can't help. He's barely keeping his head above water. You're the only one who's successful, who has money. I'm swallowing my pride and asking you to help your family. Whatever happened in the past, we're still blood. Dad. I read it twice, then forwarded it to Kevin with a note. Thoughts? His response was immediate. Screw these people. But I wanted to be thorough, so I called the hospital directly and confirmed that yes, Maria was a patient, yes, she had stage 3 breast cancer, and yes, the prognosis was challenging but not hopeless. Then I did something that surprised even me. I drove down to their trailer park. It was exactly as depressing as you'd imagine. Rusted single wides, broken cars in the driveways, the kind of place where hope goes to die. I knocked on the door. My father answered, and the change in him was shocking. He'd aged 20 years in the two since the retirement party. Alan, how did you? You asked for help, I said. I'm here to give you my answer. He led me inside to a living room that smelled like disinfectant and sadness. My mother was on the couch, wrapped in blankets, looking smaller and frailer than I'd ever seen her. Leo was there too. You came, my mother whispered, and for a second I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Yeah, I came. The silence was deafening. I have money, you're right about that. More than you can probably imagine. I could write a check right now that would solve all your problems, but I'm not going to. My father's face was cycling through emotions. Hope, desperation, anger. She's your mother. She's dying. She stopped being my mother when she drove away from that Denny's. You want to know what family looks like? It looks like Adam taking in a scared kid and never asking for anything in return. I looked at each of them in turn. You taught me that family is conditional. Well, congratulations. I learned the lesson perfectly. Leo finally spoke up. You vindictive piece of shit. She's dying. And I'm living, I replied. Really, really well. I pulled out my wallet and dropped a $10 bill on their coffee table. There's your help. Should be enough to buy you some dignity. Then I walked out, got in my car, and drove home to Austin. Back to my real life with my real family. They never contacted me again. I heard through Adam that my mother died 8 months later, and that the funeral was sparsely attended. Leo moved to another state after that. I didn't go to the funeral. I didn't send flowers or condolences. I didn't feel anything at all. Because you can't mourn people who were already dead to you.